My son spent $250K on his in-laws' anniversary, but forgot my birthday entirely. Don't let mom order anything. She's not part of today's budget. That's what my son said, right there, in front of everyone at the table, a glass of expensive wine in his hand. I'm 74, and I'm his mother. In that moment, I realized I wasn't the guest of honor. I wasn't even family. I was just another cost, cut from the bill. But what Jared didn't know is that the mother he thought had spent her life quietly enduring was about to step out of the shadows and teach him a lesson he'd never forget. My name is Lois Holloway. I live in Springfield, Missouri. People used to call me the quiet widow, that kind old mom, or the town's retired teacher. I never corrected them. I lived simply, without complaints, without expectations. For nearly 20 years, I supported my son, Jared, through every phase. His business, his marriage, his big house with the columns out front. I sold my home, moved into a tiny mobile trailer, told everyone, as long as my son's happy. I used to believe that if I stepped back, if I gave enough, my family would always remember me. I was wrong. And if you, whoever you are, listening, have ever wondered if your sacrifices were invisible, then maybe this story will reach you deeper than you expect. What Jared said that night at dinner, it was like a warning bell. But I didn't know that bell would be just the opening note in a long, slow symphony of being forgotten. And it started on the very day I turned 74. 74. I lit the candle alone, ate a slice of cake I'd bought from the bargain rack at the grocery store. No phone call, no message, no one remembered. The cake sat on my old wooden table, next to a flickering oil lamp. Wind slipped through the window frame, making the flame dance. I still set 2 plates, out of habit maybe, or hope. My mind kept replaying what Jared said last year, when he threw an arm over my shoulder in the backyard, eyes bright. "Let me take care of your birthday next year, Mom." I smiled then, probably a little foolishly, but maybe I'd just grown too used to living on borrowed hope. That hope didn't show up today. All I got was a bank text notifying me of interest deposited, and a spam email offering a discount on eye supplements. I waited all morning, all afternoon. At 5, I put on my coat and drove to Walmart. Bought a small round cake with thin white frosting and fake pink flowers. The cashier asked in bold, "Who's the birthday for, ma'am?" I answered, "Someone I used to love a lot." Back home, Rhonda knocked on my door. Her hand still smelled of hair dye, breath full of mint gum. She called out, "I'm making roast chicken tonight. Mashed potatoes, mushroom gravy. Come eat with me. It's too cold to dine alone." I stood behind the door, looking at her like I was looking at myself in a mirror, except Rhonda had made peace with her emptiness. I shook my head and smiled softly. "I'm still waiting for Jared." She looked at me for a long moment, then said only, "Well, if you change your mind, knock on my door." And she turned to leave. I turned off the kitchen light, sat alone in the dim yellow glow. The cake sat there, silent, as if waiting for someone else. I stuck in a tiny candle, lit it. The flame trembled in the breeze. I whispered, "Happy birthday" to me, and blew it out. No wish, just cold. I went to the bedroom, opened the old wooden wardrobe. In the corner sat a vintage tin cookie box, now holding house papers. I pulled it out, sat on the floor. The top page read, "Full transfer of ownership, Jared Holloway." My handwriting still clear and steady. I'd signed it myself 3 years ago. Gave him the house that was once our home, the one where I planted chrysanthemums every spring, where my husband passed away. Jared had said, "Just for easier financing, Mom. You'll live there till the end." But within a year, he sold it, handed me a small sum, told me, "Got you a mobile home, Mom. More convenient. No yard work." I said nothing. I thought, if he succeeds, I'll be fine. Maybe that was my mistake. I ran my fingers over the word transfer, then tucked the tin back away, turned off the light, went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, didn't drink it. Nights in Springfield turned cold early. My shoulders ached. The old pain in my left side was back. I opened my laptop. Slow, outdated, but good enough for Facebook. The homepage loaded a photo. An elegant dinner. Long wooden table. Tall candles. Crystal wine glasses. In the center, Jared, flanked by two men in gray suits and a blonde woman with soft curls. Caption: Dinner with clients. Napa Valley. I didn't sigh. Didn't react. Just closed the laptop. Set it on the table. Said nothing. I walked to the window. Outside, the streetlight spilled gold over scattered red-brown leaves. The wind picked up. From a distance, I heard Rhonda's TV. She was playing her usual, a rerun of classical music. Moon River began to drift through the walls, pulling me back in time. I used to love that song. In the 70s, I was a first-grade teacher at Maple Creek. When the kids went home, I'd stay late, grading papers, wiping down chalkboards, with an old cassette player humming in the background. Two drifters off to see the world. I used to think my life was like a gentle river, carrying me toward some warm, distant shore. Now I felt like a forgotten boat, stranded among dried reeds. I went into the kitchen, put away the cake. No appetite, no faith in promises. But I still remembered, like it was yesterday, the day Jared turned 6. We were poor that year. I worked nights at the town library just to buy him books. He loved dinosaurs. He wanted a T-Rex cake. I couldn't afford to order one, so I mixed pancake batter, shaped it by hand using a sketch I'd drawn, used jelly beans for eyes, strawberry syrup for blood on the mouth. Jared screamed with joy, hugged me, frosting all over his cheeks. He said, "You're the best cake wizard in the world, Mommy." And now, that little boy, once so thrilled by a dinosaur cake, couldn't remember, or didn't care enough to remember, his mother's birthday. I sat in the old wooden chair, sank into it like it was the only thing still listening. The oil lamp flickered on the table. I made a cup of tea, sipped it slowly, not because I was thirsty, but because there was nothing else to do. Close to midnight, I turned off the lights, headed to bed. Before lying down, I looked out the window again. Rain had started. That soft, damp kind of autumn rain that sneaks in quietly and chills the bones. I pulled up the blanket, but I wasn't warm. Not from the weather, but from a space inside me that had long gone unfilled. I didn't cry. I was past the age of crying over loneliness, but tonight, for the first time in years, I admitted something out loud, if only in my mind. Maybe I'm no longer on my son's list of priorities. What I didn't know was that the chill of this lonely birthday night was just a passing breeze, because a colder, deeper storm was waiting for me the next morning. I couldn't believe my eyes. Jared had spent $250,000 on a 40th anniversary celebration for his in-laws at a luxury wine resort. Rhonda's not one to meddle. But that morning, she tapped the edge of my wooden desk at the community library, flicking the newspaper I hadn't picked up yet toward me. "Lois, you need to see this." There it was, a photo of Jared standing between his in-laws, behind a 6-tiered wedding cake draped in golden flowers. It hit me like a silent slap. I blinked twice, thinking I'd mistaken him for someone else. But no, that navy blazer, that crooked little smile. It was Jared, my son, the boy who once sobbed in my arms when his voice cracked at 13. Now he stood there, toasting strangers in tuxedos in the golden light of Napa Valley. The caption stung even worse. Celebrating 40 years of everlasting love. Words can't express the gratitude I feel for my second set of parents. I set the paper down, didn't say a word. Rhonda sat across from me, quiet too. The morning sun spilled through the cafe window, catching the silver in her hair. She sipped her tea and sighed. I know, I probably shouldn't have shown you that, but… Lois, what is Jared doing? I didn't answer. I stared at the cup of coffee in front of me. Black, no sugar, just like I've had it since 1989. I pulled out my phone, logged onto Facebook. That photo had nearly 300 shares. I scrolled to the comments. So many hearts, so many praises. I typed only one word: congratulations. Not 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Jared. I answered. Son? I kept my voice even. Oh, hey Mom, I saw your comment. Thanks. His voice was cheerful, jazz music and clinking glasses humming in the background. I asked, do you know what day it is today? Silence. Just a few seconds. But long enough for me to feel the chasm between two generations, between two hearts that were once one. Jared hesitated. You don't like parties, right? I laughed. I wasn't sure if it was at him or at myself. That's right. I don't like parties. The call ended quickly. I slipped the phone into the pocket of my old wool coat, the same one I've worn since winter 2016, frayed at the hem, a few stitches loose at the cuff. I stood up, thought I'd take a walk around the small lake behind the library when someone called my name. Miss Lois, is that you? I turned, a middle-aged woman, brown hair pulled back, white blouse, jeans, walking toward me with a light in her eyes. I'm Sherry. You taught me writing in 6th grade. At Central School. She smiled, warm and genuine. I recognized you by your old name badge and the way you furrow your brow when reading the paper, just like you used to. I laughed. And here I thought I'd disappeared from everyone's memory. Sherry gently touched my shoulder. Never. You made me love writing. I'm a lawyer now, but I still write every week. I'm part of the writer's circle here. You should join us. Before I could respond, the library clock struck 11. But something inside me stirred. Something I'd lost the day I signed over the house. The day I moved into that mobile home. The day I stopped seeing myself in the mirror. I nodded at Sherry. I'll think about it. She smiled and handed me a simple white card. Sherry L. Mathis, attorney and writer. I tucked it into my old leather wallet. Faded, worn, but the only thing I've never thrown away. I left the library, walking slowly along the red brick path back to my trailer. The air was still cold. Maple leaves crackled underfoot. No one looked at me. But that didn't surprise me. Old women in faded sweaters don't turn heads in Springfield. When I got home, Rhonda was waiting on my steps. She held 2 paper cups of hot cocoa. I figured you could use something sweet, she said, and handed me one. I sat down beside her. We said nothing for a long time, only the wind in the yard, branches tapping gently on the window. I wrapped my fingers around the cup, feeling the warmth seep into the lines of my hands. Inside, the printed copy of that Facebook post still lay on the table. A reminder I didn't ask for, but couldn't bring myself to throw away. I took a deep breath. Rhonda, she turned toward me. Do you ever feel like you've given so much away? You forgot to keep even a small part for yourself? Rhonda didn't answer right away. She looked out across the street. Oh, yes. When my husband died, I felt like a crumpled piece of paper, used up, tossed aside. But one day, I took a pair of scissors and cut that paper into the shape of a heart. Not because it was pretty, but to remind myself, I still have worth. I smiled. Not a laugh, just a quiet curve of the lips. You really are part hairdresser, part poet, Rhonda. And you were the best writing teacher in all of Springfield, she winked. Don't forget that. That night, after the lights were off, I sat alone in the kitchen. No TV, no music, just the old wooden table, a lukewarm cup of tea, and a weathered notebook I found in the back of a drawer from a decade ago. I opened to the first page. My hands trembled slightly. The wind slipped through the window crack, making the desk lamp flicker. I picked up a pen, and without hesitation, without erasing, I wrote the first line. I gave my son everything, but maybe I forgot to save a piece for myself. I wasn't the mother in the background anymore. I was stepping forward, ready to write the ending of my story myself. I made that quiet promise to myself. But just as I was about to begin my journey toward freedom, Jared made his next move. A new tactic. A quiet thread he was already wrapping tighter around my throat. Jared sent me a thick envelope. Inside was a property transfer form, asking me to sign it quickly for year-end record updates. I sat at the table. The room was so quiet, I could hear the clock marking every second. Afternoon light spilled through the window, gliding over papers and an old photo frame leaning on the shelf. I didn't open the envelope right away. My hand rested on it. It felt thick, cold, unyielding, like it held something unspeakable. A text came through. Jared. Just sign it for me, Mom. It's only paperwork. I put the phone down. Sometimes the simplest words are the heaviest to bear. Just sign, he said. But I'd once just sold the house my husband built with his own hands. I'd just handed over my savings so Jared could start a business. I'd just agreed to live in a mobile home so he could have a sleek office downtown. And now, again, just sign. I called Sherry. She came over right after work, laptop in hand, legal folder under her arm. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. Sherry sat beside me, opened the envelope, and flipped through the pages. This isn't just a property transfer, she said, voice low. This is a legal relinquishment. If you sign, you lose all rights to the land, even if its value increases, even if there's a dispute later. A chill ran down my spine. I tried to read, but my vision blurred. The words twisted on the page. My hands trembled. I thought of the night Jared was born, how I stayed awake for 2 days straight when his fever spiked, how I hand-washed all his college clothes every single month, how I picked up extra shifts when he was unemployed, just to send a bit more. And now, it was all just paperwork? Sherry rested a hand on my shoulder. Do you know why Jared had you hold the deed in your name originally? I shook my head. To get a bigger loan. If you sign now, he can mortgage the land completely, and you'll have no say in any of it. The room seemed to shrink. Outside, the wind howled. A tree branch scratched against the window, like a ghost tapping gently. I looked at the photo on the shelf. Me, my husband, and young Jared, back when he was still in grade school. The glass had a crack running diagonally. From the day I dropped it while dusting, I meant to replace it, but never did. That crack now looked like a divide. One side memory, one side reality. Rhonda stopped by around 6. She brought 2 bowls of potato soup and garlic bread, a routine we'd fallen into these past few months. I didn't eat right away. The paper lay open on the table, the pen still capped. Rhonda saw it, said nothing, She opened the soup and gently placed a spoon in my hand, like she was saying, "Eat first. The rest can wait." "Rhonda," I asked quietly, "do you think I've been too naive? I always thought doing everything for my son was enough. But maybe I've just made myself easy to use." She sat across from me, studied my face, then said, "Lois, love isn't wrong, but love without boundaries gets treated like obligation. You need a lawyer, not to sue, to understand what's really happening." I didn't respond, just felt a strange emptiness inside. Not the old sadness from years past, but something that had just shattered and was beginning to shift, quietly, but definitely. I set the soup aside and slid the documents toward Sherry. "Help me file everything properly," I said. "From now on, I want to understand every word I sign." She looked at me for a second, then nodded slowly. No questions, no judgment. She opened her laptop and began typing, steady, focused, as if she understood. Sometimes words only make things worse. I stood and walked to the wooden shelf in the corner. There I kept what was left of my before life, a tin of sewing needles, some old lesson plans, and a folder I'd nearly thrown away. I pulled it down, brushed off the dust, and opened it. Copies of contracts, handwritten letters from my late husband, bank documents I no longer remembered. I handed them to Sherry. "Look through all of this. Maybe it's time I finally see the full picture." She nodded. "You'll need a few sessions to verify property rights, old powers of attorney, and anything else Jared might have signed in your name." I nodded. A strange mix of relief and pain filled me, like standing too long in the rain. And even after stepping inside, the cold stayed in your bones. Rhonda held my hand. "I don't understand all the legal stuff," she said. "But I do know this. If Jared really loved you, he wouldn't have sent that envelope. He would have come in person, sat down with you, explained it, not just told you to sign." I smiled sadly. Maybe I taught him how to fly, but forgot to teach him how to look back. Outside, the sky darkened. Wind whistled through the cracks. I heard something, a soft creak in the wood. Then silence. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was my husband. He used to say, "When the cold winds blow, I always feel the need to come home." But now, where is home? This mobile home is just a place I stay, not a haven, not where anyone waits for me. I walked to the table, picked up the pen, looked at the photo frame again. The cracks seemed deeper. I gently touched Jared's face. When he was still a little boy, those eyes once looked at me with complete trust. Now they avoided me. In real life and in cold, distant messages. I exhaled slowly, no longer angry, not even truly sad, just certain. I am not the mother in the wings anymore. I will step forward and write the final chapters myself. Even as the spark of resistance begins to rise inside me, I know. To truly break free from the shadows, I must face an even harsher truth, and it awaits me in the very place where I should have been honored most. "Don't let Mom order anything. She's not part of today's budget." Jared laughed like it was a joke. I tried to smile, but no one looked. No one wanted to. Tina pressed her lips together, holding back what might have been a sigh, then turned to the waiter and said softly, "Just 5 portions. She doesn't eat much." I sat still, bathed in the dim amber glow of a fancy Italian restaurant in Kansas City, both hands resting lightly on the white tablecloth, blank as unwritten paper. Wine glasses clinked. Conversations flew overhead. Investments, real estate, Napa's grape season. They passed over me like a foreign breeze. I didn't understand, didn't need to anymore. I was invited here. Come along, Mom. Late birthday dinner. And we're meeting clients too. I nodded. Like always. Like every just come along. Like every time Jared bundled everything into one evening, one table, one chair, and placed me neatly in it, silent, out of the way. They ordered truffle mushroom risotto, lobster ravioli, veal in red wine reduction. I stared at the chilled bread plate in front of me. The waiter looked at me with a flicker of sympathy, refilling my water without a word, his eyes pausing briefly on my faded scarf, the one I've worn since last winter. I once made risotto for Jared when he caught a cold in ninth grade. We didn't have much then. I used canned mushrooms instead of truffles, regular rice, not arborio, but he ate the whole pot, then leaned into me and said, "Make it again tomorrow, Mom." Tonight, same dish. But the boy was gone. In his place stood a man in a tailored suit, talking market forecasts while turning his face away from mine. I pulled out my phone, searched for Sherry's name. Didn't call. Just kept my finger hovering over the dial. Jared glanced up, saw I hadn't touched my plate. He tilted his head and smiled. "Mom, it's a business dinner." I nodded. Yes, I knew. Tina raised her glass, beaming at her parents, dressed in perfectly matched colors, flown in from California just to share the joy. The waiter brought out a small cake, no candles. Jared said, "Happy 40th anniversary to the best parents ever. Without them, there'd be no amazing Tina." Applause. Tina dabbed her eyes. I looked around the table. Not one person looked back. I stood up, quiet as the shadow I'd been all night, and walked to the door. Outside, the air was crisp. Yellowed leaves scattered on the cobbled sidewalk. I took out my phone, pressed a number. Sherry answered. "Lois, is something wrong?" I drew a breath. "You said if my name's still on any deed, Jared can't sell it without me, right?" She paused. "Yes, and I've checked. There's something I need to tell you." I leaned against a street lamp, clutching my purse. Inside, laughter echoed as if nothing had happened. But to me, it felt like I'd just walked away from a funeral. No casket, just a dinner where my spirit had been quietly left behind, somewhere between the risotto and the celebration cake. Sherry's tone shifted. "I'm sorry I didn't bring this up sooner. Jared's preparing to mortgage the Ozark property, the one still under your name." I closed my eyes, rested my head against the cold metal. "I haven't signed anything," I whispered. "Exactly," Sherry said. "That's why the bank called. They assumed you'd agreed, but the paperwork isn't complete. Jared seems to be in a hurry." I laughed bitterly. He always is, with money. And me? I've been slow enough not to get in the way. "I know this is hard," Sherry said gently. "But Lois, you still have partial ownership. That means, if you refuse, the deal halts, immediately." I looked through the restaurant window. Jared was pouring wine for Tina's father, bathed in golden light from the chandeliers. He looked kind, successful, devoted, if you didn't know better. But I stood closer than anyone ever had. I'd cleaned the mud from his shoes on his first day of school. I knew he liked chocolate over vanilla, blue shirts over white. And I knew the way his eyes dart when he's lying. Tonight, I'd seen that look again, all through dinner. Sherry waited for my answer. I spoke softly, as if to myself. "I don't want to break a family, but I won't be someone's tool either." Silence. Then Sherry replied, "I understand." I ended the call, slipped the phone into my coat. The wind was stronger now. I tightened my collar and walked along the sidewalk outside the restaurant. Each step echoed a question in my chest. How did I let it come to this? How did I The teacher who taught a whole generation to think for themselves, become someone who couldn't speak up at her own son's table? Streetlights stretched my shadow long and thin. I stopped in front of a shop window. The reflection stared back. A thin woman, graying hair tousled in the wind, eyes hollow. I looked at her for a long while, then nodded. I had let too much pass. It was time to be different. I returned to Rhonda's. She'd just finished watching a game show, a bowl of popcorn in her lap, eyes wide when she saw me come in early. "You're back already? How was the dinner?" I hung my coat, poured a glass of water. "It was good food. Pretty cake." Rhonda studied me. "What happened?" I didn't answer right away. I sat down, pulled a notepad and pen toward me. I didn't know what I was going to write, but my hand moved anyway. The first lines shook. Then the words began to flow, like rain after a long drought. I am not the mother in the background anymore. I will step forward and rewrite the ending to my story. And from that night on, those words didn't just stay on paper. They became my compass, the first true step toward reclaiming myself. The next day, I walked into the notary office, in my old cardigan, hair tied back, carrying faded documents, and a new plan. The carpet beneath my feet was worn gray where people had stood, signing names, confirming moments that changed their lives. The wallpaper had yellowed, fraying at the corners, but I wasn't there to look back. I was there to begin a new chapter, in every sense of the word. "Lois Holloway?" A deep voice called from behind the counter. I looked up. It was Greg, his back slightly stooped with age, but his eyes still sharp. I recognized him instantly. A high school classmate. He used to sit behind me, always fumbling for help with American Lit. "Greg, it's been a long time," I said, nodding. He smiled, eyes crinkling. "Miss Holloway, the woman who saved me from flunking Nathaniel Hawthorne." I laughed too. "Well, today I might need a little of that luck back." We shook hands. I handed him the envelope. "I'm here to reestablish guardianship and remove my son's name from all powers of attorney." Greg glanced through the documents, then called in the older clerk to fetch the right forms. "You're sure?" he asked gently. "Just asking, as someone who's known you a long time." "I'm sure," I said slowly. "I didn't come here to hurt anyone. I came here to stop letting others hurt me." I sat down on the soft leather chair, organizing the paperwork in front of me. A slight tremor moved through my fingers, but I held steady. I wasn't the woman from 3 days ago, sitting at the kitchen sink in the cold, waiting for a birthday call. Today, I brought something else with me: clarity. The door opened. Sherry walked in, carrying a stack of prepped files and her worn shoulder bag. Not a stiff-suited lawyer today, just a woman who knew what it felt like to be forgotten and chose not to be anymore. "You okay?" she asked softly as she sat beside me. I used to sign anything Jared handed me because I thought my son would never hurt me, but today, I'm reading every word. We sat together, going over each clause. Sherry underlined the risks, explained everything patiently. I asked questions, more than once. I wasn't the lost mother at the business dinner anymore. I was a woman who understood the power of her name on a piece of paper. When all was clear, I picked up the pen, and I signed. Not because Jared needed me to, not because someone urged me to, but because I believed I deserved to protect what was left of my life. I left the notary's office with a sealed copy in a cream-colored envelope. I labeled it slowly, freedom. Strangely, those 2 words made my hands feel lighter. Lighter than the thick file I'd carried in. Lighter than all the heavy years I'd shouldered out of duty, out of fear that my son might think I wasn't enough. As I stepped outside, a breeze caught my sleeve. The scent of pine lingered from Greg's old wooden desk. And suddenly, it took me back to a memory. My husband and I, building our first house by hand. The first tree he sawed down was pine. I remembered him saying, "Don't let anyone make you smaller, no one." He's been gone a long time, but today, those words echoed louder than ever. Back home, I carefully tucked the envelope into the drawer. Beside it, a faded photo. Me, him, and Jared on a sunny day in our backyard. I didn't cry. I just sat quietly for a few minutes, then made tea. Rhonda was on the porch in her wicker chair, holding a tin of cookies. "Thought I'd drop by unannounced," she said. "Brought some ginger snaps. You remember these, don't you?" I smiled. "Of course I do." She looked at me for a long moment, then rested her hand on my knee. "Tell me, Lois, you did something, didn't you? Your eyes, they're not the same as yesterday." So I told her everything. No drama, no embellishments, just truth, told in the way I've always lived. Quiet, patient, and no longer naive. I told her about the papers, about Jared using my name, about how I'd begun reclaiming my rights. Rhonda didn't speak for a while. Then she placed a hand on my shoulder. "Welcome back," she said. I didn't answer, just smiled. It felt like coming home from a long journey, not in distance, but back to being someone again. After she left, I sorted my documents, burned a few old notes, lists I'd once made of things to forgive, just so I wouldn't resent my son. I didn't need them anymore. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I'd finally learned to love myself enough not to drown in that love. At dusk, the phone rang. It was Jared. I sat down, let it ring a few times before answering. "What did you just do?" His voice was tight, straining. "You know I needed that loan." I didn't tremble. I didn't explain. I simply said, "I just protected the rest of my life." I stood in front of the classroom at my first Writer's Circle workshop. I introduced myself. "My name is Lois, and once I was forgotten by my own family." That was all. The room fell silent for a beat. Then a few eyes looked at me. Not with pity, not with surprise, just understanding. Every woman here, I knew, carried an untold story of her own. Autumn sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting soft light on the whiteboard behind me, where the words, "Your story matters," were written in blue marker. I gripped the stack of paper in my hands. It trembled slightly. Not from fear, but anticipation. For the first time in years, I was saying something not to please anyone, but to affirm that I still existed. The first piece I want to share, I looked up, is just a short one. About a birthday cake bought in a rush, a single candle lit alone, and the quiet ache of waiting for no one to arrive. No one interrupted. I read aloud. Not theatrically, not tearfully, just in the voice I used to read to my students. Calm, steady, but never cold. When I stopped, a hush settled again. Then, from the front row, an older woman with silver hair, her name escaped me, spoke slowly. "You're not just the mother of your son. You are the mother of yourself, too." I smiled softly, as if I'd just heard something worth keeping forever. Maybe I'd been waiting for those words for years. Not from Jared, but from me. During the break, I walked to the tea table. Rhonda was already there, holding out a cup of hot herbal tea. "Still chamomile," she said. "You've never changed your flavor." I accepted it, nodded gently. Some things we hold on to so we know we're still ourselves. Sherry walked over. She wore a gray blouse, her hair neatly pinned up, looking just as she did the first day we reconnected. Confident, sharp, but with that softness in her eyes she saved just for me. "Good news," she said, handing me a sealed envelope. "The bank confirmed. The property is officially back under your guardianship. Jared no longer holds power of attorney." I took it. Didn't shake. Didn't cry. Didn't gasp like on TV. Just felt right. Like finding a wedding ring behind a drawer. Its value invisible to others, but to you. Proof that you once lived, once loved, once gave everything. I returned to my seat, slipped the envelope into my bag. Rhonda looked at me, waiting for something. I poured tea, for her too, and said, "I'm going to host a dinner, but not for anyone else, for me, and the ones who remember me." I spent the afternoon preparing, not a banquet, not a show, just a few things I love: potato soup, grilled cheese, and the only dessert I ever got just right: honey poached pears. I set the table by the window, laid out the moss green wool runner my husband bought in Asheville back in 1982. Next to it, my old cassette player. I pressed play. Moon River filled the air. It was the soundtrack of autumn evenings when I graded papers at home, and Jared fell asleep across my lap. Rhonda brought a bottle of red wine. "Not Napa Valley," she joked, "but it'll warm the heart." Sherry arrived late, carrying a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. "From the shop near my firm," she said. "I figured you deserved something beautiful, even if it wasn't expensive." We ate. We talked. No one checked the time. I told them about the writing class, about the woman who said, "You are the mother of yourself." Rhonda nodded. "You always were. You just didn't admit it until now." At the end of dinner, I pulled out the draft from the other night, read the closing lines again. Not to prove anything, just to say aloud what I'd never dared admit before. I was once forgotten on my birthday, but today, I'm the first to wish myself well. They didn't speak right away. Then, together, they raised their glasses. In that moment, I felt seen. Not as someone's mother, but as a whole person, right there before them, no longer squeezed into roles others had given me. Later, as we cleared the table, my phone buzzed. A message from Jared. "Mom, we need to talk." I looked at the screen, held my gaze there a moment. No anger, no sorrow, no hope. Then I turned off the screen. "I'll reply when I'm ready." I've started waking up earlier, not to wait for Jared's call anymore, but to brew tea for myself, to open the window and let sunlight spill into the small living room. The old rocking chair creaks under me, and I no longer feel alone in it. There's a strange feeling now. Not quite joy, but not sadness either. Like I've just come through a long winter and I'm learning to walk in spring light again. I haven't deleted Jared's number, haven't blocked his messages. I've just set the phone aside, and I'm learning how to breathe without waiting for a sound. Once, I overheard Rhonda on the phone with someone. "Lois is coming back to life." I don't know if that's the right phrase, but I think she meant, I've stopped shrinking myself. The writing group meetings have become the place where I feel truly seen. No one there needs anything from me. They just want to hear me. The stories I write now aren't tears hidden in the kitchen. They're the voice of a woman who walked through the dark and found her way out. Even if the way wasn't easy, I've started writing more about my late husband, about the way he looked at me when I taught Jared fractions, or how he reminded me to keep my name on every piece of paper. "Not for the money," he said, "but because if your name isn't there, no one will remember you lived in that house." Now I understand how deep that message really was. Lately, I've started planting again. Small herbs in pots on the porch. Rhonda gave me parsley seeds. Ellen from the writing circle brought over mint sprouts. No one calls it a garden, But I love watching the leaves grow each day. There's something about nurturing something small that makes me feel like I'm healing too. I'm also learning to say no. No to requests that leave me drained. No to meetups where I feel invisible. No to memories I once thought would always ache. Not out of anger, but because I won't lose more of myself to anything anymore. I still haven't replied to Jared's last message. Not out of punishment, but because I'm thinking, if I do speak, I want to say something that lets me keep my self-respect, without slipping back into the worn-out robe of sacrifice. My son, he is part of my life, but he is not all of it. It's taken me 74 years to be able to say that out loud. Yesterday, when I closed my notebook, I wrote one line on the final page. I used to be the mother everyone needed. Now I am the woman I need. And I realized, maybe that is my true birthday. The day I stopped waiting to be acknowledged and started living as if I had always been worthy. Tonight, I'll roast a chicken. Not because anyone asked, but because I miss the warmth of the kitchen. And I want Rhonda and a few new friends to come over for dinner. No cake, no candles, just hot tea and shared laughter. Sometimes, that's all a forgotten soul needs to feel alive again. I don't know what the next chapter of my life will look like, but I know this. I will be the one holding the pen. You may be hearing this story from somewhere quiet, maybe a kitchen, behind a steering wheel, or during a silent afternoon. But if you've ever felt like I did, set aside by the very people you love, please know this. Every detour can still lead you home, as long as you don't abandon yourself. And if one day someone asks me, what was the most painful thing in your life? I'll answer, when you give everything and receive silence in return. And the thing I'm most proud of, I'll smile and say, when I finally decided not to stay silent anymore.